Welcome to Foreign Talk from Iraqia News. Today, our guest, Colonel Myles Caggins, and his Director of Public Affairs and Spokesperson, Combined Joint Task Forces Operation Inherent Resolve. Colonel, welcome to our program.
Assalamu alaikum, Mohammed, and Ramadan Mubarak to all of your viewers.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you so very much. We're very happy to have you with us today. If you kindly light us for your vision as coalition forces for a future. We know we had couple of rough months, 10 months we have been through as Iraqis as a whole, and the coalition forces obviously as part of the defense mechanism for our country. Hopefully the future will be better. What's your vision in that aspect after the formation of the new government, new Iraqi government?
Well, Mohammed, I'd like to talk a little bit about the past and where we were.
Yes, please.
In 2014, where we are today, and then preview what we can expect later in 2020 and beyond.
Yes, sir.
2014, your audience will recall that ISIS quickly swept across Syria and into Iraq, taking great cities like Mosul, Tikrit, the city of Baiji, and areas in the Anbar province. ISIS was threatening to go into the Kurdistan region and Erbil, and there was a massacre at Sinjar where they were killing Yazidis. The government of Iraq requested assistance from the United States and later the global coalition to help the security forces with airstrikes to defeat ISIS.
Yes, sir.
The first significant airstrikes were around the city of Amerli.
Yes, sir.
And with the security forces, including the Iraqi army, the counterterrorism service, Peshmerga, and other groups, the people from that area were freed from ISIS. And we had great success over the following years through the liberation of Iraq from ISIS in December of 2017.
Correct.
In addition to fighting against ISIS forces on the ground in Iraq and Syria, we have conducted training and mentoring for more than 225,000 members of the security force, federal police, army, Iraqi Air Force, counterterrorism service, Peshmerga, Zaravani. And as a result of our partnership, the coalition's partnership with the Iraqi security forces at the invitation of the government of Iraq, the security forces today are better led, better trained, and better equipped than they were in 2014. ISIS remains a threat. They are down but not out. They have announced in recent weeks that they've conducted more than 20 operations. But each time ISIS tries to attack the security forces, they fail. And sometimes ISIS takes credit for when the security forces in Iraq are attacking them. These attacks from ISIS are small weapons, roadside bombs. We have not seen them have the capability to have large attacks, and they definitely cannot hold any physical territory in 2020. But the coalition remains partnered with the Iraqi security forces, and we certainly will do everything that we can to help the people of Iraq be free from any threats from ISIS.
You have mentioned, Colonel, that recently, for the couple of weeks, we have seen attacks from Daesh. Why do you think this timing? Do you think because there is issues with the political system in Iraq, they hunt for something? You think because of coronavirus, for example? Why do you think the reasons now we saw them, that's sleeping cells, we start to see them more active and more aggressive, if you like, in their approach?
Well, ISIS announced that they would have offensive operations during Ramadan.
Ramadan, okay.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
but and in the year of 2020, the number of ISIS attacks has increased from January, February,
Correct.
March through April.
Correct.
But if you compare April of 2020 against 1 year ago, April of 2019, we find that the amount of attacks by ISIS are down 36%. So ISIS is not as capable as they were, and that's because the security forces are continuing operations against them. It's a big priority of the Iraqi Joint Operations Command to conduct anti-ISIS missions. And in the past 2 weeks, there have been more than 25 anti-ISIS missions from Diyala through the Kirkuk region and into Anbar, Ruthba area, as well as significant Iraqi security forces activity to keep the border between Iraq and Syria safe and closed from smuggling routes that have been used by terrorist groups.
Basically, there is significant in the attack in their attack, Daesh, towards Ramadan, if you like, but it have nothing to do with your withdrawal or reshuffling your forces, because we know the Americans, coalition forces in general, have withdrawn from a couple of Iraqi bases, and they reshuffled. What exactly you guys did? Or you pull out? What you did exactly? If you enlighten our viewers.
Yeah, that's right,
Yes, sir.
Mohammed. And I know your viewers are quite astute and follow the news closely.
Correct.
But for somebody who might just be watching you for the first day, I'll
Yes, sir.
give you a description of where the coalition troops are inside
Please.
Iraq.
Please, sir. Thank you.
Since 2014, our focus has been on the areas where ISIS used to have physical territory, mostly north of Baghdad, central, and then toward the west in Anbar province and Nineveh.
Yes, sir.
The United States and coalition troops have not had forces in Janub Iraq since 2012 and before that, after the troops' withdrawal. So there are no helicopters or planes or U.S. military trucks driving down the roads in Nasiriyah or Amara or Wasit or Babel province. We do not have any operations there at all. This year, after months of planning in coordination with the government of Iraq, the coalition troops that were in small compounds in larger Iraqi bases moved out, and these are the bases that we departed: Kirkuk, Kiara, the Nineveh Operations Center in Mosul, Habaniya, and Al-Qaim,
Correct.
as well as Abu Ghraib.
Correct.
And in each instance, we departed because of the security environment and the success of the Iraqi security forces against ISIS. Let's look at the base in Kiara. That base was used for operations to liberate Mosul. Mosul was liberated years ago.
Correct.
So the commander, the coalition military commander, made an assessment and determined with the Iraqi security forces that we did not need to have coalition troops physically in Kiara. But we remain partnered, and we still bring intelligence sharing, air support, and advising at the operational level for the security forces.
So those forces you pull out from those bases, withdraw from Iraq completely, or you reshuffle them, you with them somewhere else?
That's a great question. Some of the troops that left the bases
Yes, sir.
have returned to their home countries and will never come back.
All right.
Others repositioned to a couple of the bases where we still have troops, for instance, Al-Assad base or Bil or
All right.
in the Baghdad cluster. And some of those troops were involved in mentoring, training.
All right.
They went home as part of the temporary pause for COVID. The Iraqi security forces and the coalition decided that there should not be military training during COVID because military training requires people to be close together, And we know that
Social distance.
yes, the social physical distancing
correct.
is key,
Correct.
and limiting large group meetings is really important
Yes,
for
sir.
stopping the spread of COVID.
So rumors, you are a media man, and you know very well rumors and talks a lot of it out there. So we just want to put the facts in front of everyone out there. This withdraw or redistribute or your forces from their base somewhere elsewhere, or some of them, like you say, they went back home, did not create any kind of tension between you as a coalition forces and the Iraqi government in any way? Or the cooperation remains the same level, or slow down a little? Or how would you describe your relationship? Hopefully the future will be better. I mean, that it was tension everywhere, I believe.
Well, I think the relationship that we've had with the Iraqi government has been strong and continues to be strong.
Yes. Okay.
Again, it was in 2014 that the Iraqi government said, please help.
Correct.
And the United States, the coalition, answered the call. I think if you were to ask a family who lives in Mosul or Karatapa or Samara, what do they think about being free from ISIS? Those families would probably say things are better now, and that's because the coalition has worked in close cooperation with the government of Iraq. Prior to moving from these small compounds out of the bases, everything was arranged through the government of Iraq, up through the Prime Minister's office, to get clearance, to have extra cargo planes, move out equipment and people. We had large cargo civilian convoys to move our equipment to other places where they can be retrograded back to home countries or the United States. And we transferred more than $10 million of property to the government of Iraq.
All right.
These camps that we had, these little camps, were established with barracks and dining facilities, laundry facilities, gymnasiums. That is now all turned over to the government of Iraq for use by the Iraqi security forces.
And we're very grateful for that. Can you give us kind of general idea how many of your troops currently are in Iraq? We don't want specific number, obviously, because of the security reasons. But if you give us an estimation, how many you think of your coalition forces are currently in Iraq?
Has around 8,000 security forces, and the coalition is multiple nations.
Yes.
We have more than 30 nations who are part of the military coalition to defeat Daesh in Iraq and Syria. We also have a headquarters in Kuwait that coordinates many of the operations between the two nations. And these nations have all committed in different ways to helping the Iraqi security forces be as successful as they can be. This includes many Arab nations like Egypt and Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan. So the whole world recognized the threat of ISIS, and the first place where the significant military response was right here in Iraq.
So basically your numbers depends on the situation on the ground. That's up to the officers and obviously the coalition forces officers and the Iraqi government representatives on that matter. They decide what is needed and they will get it done, correct?
Certainly, yes. The capabilities of the coalition are mostly based on what is requested by the Iraqi security forces. And the movements of our troops in and out of the region is coordinated through diplomatic agreements, and the actual physical movements are coordinated through operations with the air traffic control and the permissions of the government of Iraq.
And that coordination, unfortunate situation we have seen, especially recently, the armed function has been attacking the coalition forces bases with weapons. And what's your take on that matter? I mean, you have been coordinating obviously with the Iraqi government. You are going to take your own protection, steps in that matter?
Yeah, this is, the region is an environment that has different threats.
Yes.
And there were rogue militia groups that attacked Iraqi bases. Mohammed, we are sitting on an Iraqi base right now. As we were talking, this base has been attacked by rogue militia groups. I don't know what all the motivations are of the
Yeah.
rogue militia groups. But what I can tell you is that these attacks that we have seen,
Yes, sir.
mostly in the early part of the year, more than 20 attacks, have killed and injured Iraqi troops as well as coalition troops. And our focus here as the coalition is just to defeat Daesh. And groups that want to interrupt and interfere with that have been condemned by the coalition and the government of Iraq. And we're happy that the Iraqi security forces are continuing to secure the bases and also are conducting investigations and trying to find out who did these attacks.
If you can put your personal evaluation on the Iraqi forces today compared to the same forces a couple of years back, after your training, after the experience they got, how you evaluate these forces now?
Well, the coalition has worked closely with security forces since 2014, and some of us who've been in the military a little longer, this is my third time in Iraq, as far back as 2003, and we've seen the evolution of the Iraqi security forces from after Saddam's army was disbanded to different iterations of the Iraqi security forces. What we know in 2020 is that the security forces are the best that they have been. Some examples of that: there are operations that have been conducted over a multi-day period in multiple provinces. In 2019, the Iraqi security forces had the Will of Victory campaign.
Yes.
And through these Will of Victory operations, there were large ground clearance to find ISIS sleeper cells, caches, bed down locations. And those ground operations were supported by the Iraqi Army Aviation as well as the Iraqi Air Force. In recent weeks, the Iraqi Air Force has conducted airstrikes with F-16s, dropping bombs on ISIS caves.
Yes.
A few days ago, the Iraqis fired a missile to destroy an ISIS boat on Hamran Lake. So they're quite capable and have tactical overmatch against ISIS. What does that mean, tactical overmatch? Iraqi security forces have more troops and better training and better equipment than Daesh. The coalition helps the Iraqi security forces have greater operational overmatch and reach. I'll explain what we bring. As you know, we have great capabilities in the military from Western nations, including the United States, for intelligence. We have drones. We have the most sophisticated jets and aircraft. So we can help security forces find targets in faraway places, in wadis, in mountains, and helping them find targets and at their request striking targets gives an opportunity for the security forces on the ground to go and do a further investigation, hunt down, kill, or capture any Fulul Daesh.
So for the future reference, after this COVID hopefully will be finished, eliminated, whatever the situation is going to be in the future, you're planning to continue cooperation with the Iraqi government and the Iraqi armed forces, obviously. In the same field, you're going to focus also on training, you're going to focus also in helping them and supporting them in the intelligent world, if you like, or there are more fields you are planning to hopefully to cooperate with the Iraqi side?
Yeah, I'll describe our training. I mentioned earlier that more than 225,000 security forces
Have
were
been
trained.
trained, correct.
And the coalition for the past 5 years has led a lot of hands-on training.
Yes, sir.
So this is a sergeant from Italy
Yes.
teaching the Jundi how to pick up the rifle and shoot a target. Well, in 2019, the coalition was training the trainer.
Yes, sir.
So we were teaching Iraqi, Kurdish officers and senior soldiers how to conduct their own training, and the coalition was stepping back into a mentorship role, a senior mentorship role or senior trainer, not as hands-on.
Yes, sir.
With the pause for COVID, We think after the COVID pause that the training and mentoring will shift more to NATO.
Yes, sir.
We know that Prime Minister Kadami and NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg
They had a phone call.
had a phone call
Correct.
at the request of the new Prime Minister.
Correct.
So even though there's a new government in Iraq, we'll have the same commitment to the government and the people of Iraq to keep them free from Daesh. And as discussions continue through the period of COVID and into the summer, we think maybe later into the summer we'll have a better idea of coalition nations coming back, working with NATO to continue high-level mentoring and training.
And we will continue our conversation after a kindly short break. Please, we'll take a short break. Please stay with us. We'll be right back. Thank you. Welcome back. We'll continue our conversation with Colonel Myles Caggins. Colonel, we were talking earlier about the contribution and a great help we're getting from the coalition forces towards the Iraqi army. As an Iraqi, obviously, Iraqi people, the most important element of it. There is something we'd like to ask, obviously, because the people out there is asking, and you promise us you will give the straight answer to everyone.
Yes.
Basically, people are wondering, the problematic, if you like to describe it, relationship between the United States government and Iran. Does it affect your job in any way as a supporter to the Iraqi government and Iraqi people because of the complex, if you like, situation between Iraq and Iran? Doesn't interfere or intervene in any way with your jobs, your performance?
Well, the Iraq has a long relationship with neighboring countries.
Correct.
And that's always been a contextual element of the U.S. and Iraq relationship. And the United States recognizes the significance of Iraq to this region and the great opportunities that Iraq has for economic power. This is a place that can have great tourism. There's a history, the cradle of the world civilization is here. Great religions have historic sites throughout Iraq. And the focus of the U.S.-led coalition has been one thing, and that's just defeating Daesh.
All right.
We don't seek any other conflicts in the region, and we do retain the right to protect our troops, and we have to protect our troops to stay on our mission of defeating Daesh. I'd like to talk a little bit about what security does for the people. Your
Yes.
viewers are interested.
Yes, sir.
This week, the USAID has worked with non-government partners, religious charities to deliver 85,000 meals, or correction, to deliver meals for 85,000 people in the Nineveh province.
All right.
This is people who have been affected by poverty, by the economic downturn from COVID. And it's not just a one-day meal. This is meals for a month with food choices that would be desirable for people in that region. This is a region that was, again, under ISIS control a few years ago.
Yes, sir.
Because of the coalition's partnership with the Iraqi security forces and the Iraqi security forces' continued presence and pressure against Daesh sleeper cells, now there's opportunity for aid groups to bring in relief, and there's been quite a bit of rebuilding in Mosul and other cities.
You're talking about Mosul. I think there are a couple of attacks recently has been moved by Daesh in Kirkuk. Why do you think they move in Kirkuk? There is soft spots there. What exactly? Why is Kirkuk and specifically?
Well, we know that Daesh likes to hide in the
Mountains, yes.
regions.
All right.
As I characterize it, they had a so-called caliphate,
Yes,
and
sir.
now they're living in caves.
Yes.
And the fighters who are there will come out of the mountains and try to harass villages, and they do a lot of activity that's criminal in nature. They're struggling to have money, and they're struggling because of the international coalition. In 2012 and 13, it was easy to wire transfer money from banks all around the world that would get into the leadership of ISIS, and then they could pay for fighters and supporters.
They financed it. Yeah.
Now that international finance of ISIS has been disrupted by law enforcement and intelligence agencies around the world, ISIS does not have control of oil production facilities
So you're looking
anymore.
for sources, basically?
Yes, so they have to
Financial.
do criminal things. So they will rob, steal, kidnap for ransom, collect illegal taxes. Sometimes they will do things to harm the local public, like
Definitely.
burning crops.
Yeah.
This is terrible.
Especially now season. Last year we
Yes.
saw unfortunate situations, a couple of them, correct?
Yes,
That's correct.
many thousands of acres, square kilometers
yeah.
being burned by ISIS
Correct.
in the nighttime. This is to harm the people, and they do this to try to cause fear and to try to shake the confidence of the public in the security forces.
Yes, sir.
But people are rejecting
Correct.
ISIS.
Yes.
There was a time where some people thought that maybe Daesh would be a good group, but after living under their murderous, tyrannical rule for some weeks and months, now people reject Daesh, and we're happy that many private citizens, innocent civilians, are reporting ISIS activity to the security forces, so then action can be taken.
We spoke earlier about one of the neighbors, Iranian borders. If we can kindly talk about the Syrian borders, the situation there are quite fragile. And you as a coalition forces support the Iraqi armed forces with intelligence. What kind of support you give them to strengthen their control over the Iraqi-Syrian borders, please?
The threat of Daesh is a global threat.
Yes, sir.
And of course, right here in Iraq and Syria, this is where they used to have 100,000 square kilometers and nearly 8 million people underneath their
Correct.
terrible, tyrannical rule.
Correct.
The coalition I've described where we are in Iraq, and in Syria, we have several bases in Hasaka and Deir ez-Zor province.
Yes, sir.
That's along the border of Iraq.
Iraq, yes.
And our partnership there with the Syrian Democratic Forces helps the people of Iraq to be free from ISIS.
Yes, sir.
ISIS used to control border crossings,
Correct.
major border crossings.
Correct.
And the Iraqi security forces were able to liberate those border crossings, and now they're under control of the security forces. And there are talks between the Syrian Democratic Forces and the Iraqi military leaders to coordinate security along the border. We don't want ISIS to be able to smuggle weapons and fighters freely across the border.
Correct.
And the coalition supports the SDF and Iraqi security forces with drone overflights. We have helicopters and other means to take a look at areas on the ground that have been a problem previously.
So coordination is continuing between the Iraqi government and the coalition forces in that aspect, correct?
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Yes, the coordination mostly occurs in the Joint Operations Command, Iraq, here at the base in Baghdad,
Yes, sir.
where you have coalition officers and advisors sitting side by side with Iraqi officers.
Yes, sir.
And this includes representatives from the Iraqi Border Guards, Federal Police, Army, Peshmerga, Counterterrorism Service, and we have coalition representatives from ground forces and air forces, as well as intelligence. And they were able to collaborate, coordinate, and clear the coalition's participation and support of the Iraqi security forces.
Colonel, do you think there is any change in strategy as far as Daesh approach with COVID-19? There are certain things have changed according to you because you are on the ground? Or not really, anything have changed, they are the same approach?
The pressure put on by security forces has not changed the intent.
All right.
What Daesh has done is tried to use what they thought was going to be gaps in pressure from the security forces.
That's the question.
But as you know, there have been bans on traveling between provinces. There's curfews.
Correct.
So ISIS and terrorist groups like to move around in the night. Well,
Obviously.
now there are more checkpoints and more enforcement of people moving.
Correct.
So the COVID pandemic and the reaction to it has actually made it more difficult for ISIS to pop up in the night and travel.
So it's useful in a way.
In a way, yes, in a way.
All right.
It's
As
useful.
far as COVID-19 is concerned, do you have any cases in your base here in Iraq? Do you know if a few of your troops has got the virus? Or you guys always checking their troops? Because we heard about the cases in so many military bases, American military bases around the world. About,
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
can you enlighten us on this? Please?
Yes, well, thanks to God, we do not have any
Alhamdulillah. All right.
coalition COVID-19.
All right.
But we've done a lot of work. So
Uh-huh.
I'll describe this for you.
Yes, please.
Before troops can come into Iraq,
Yes, sir.
they have to spend 14 days quarantine.
All right. Excellent.
And then they travel on military aircraft, so what we call clean conveyance. So
All right.
we'll put them from their home country on a military aircraft.
Mhm.
Then they have 14 days either at their home country or 14 days in Kuwait before they can come into Iraq.
All right.
We, on each of our bases, have medical professionals, doctors, nurses. We have biofire testing kits.
Yes, sir.
And if somebody has symptoms, there are special areas where we are able to isolate them, treat them, or monitor the symptoms.
All right.
If they had severe symptoms, we have the capability to fly our troops out. But the first thing to do is to reduce the amount of meetings, keep physical distancing, sometimes wear personal protective equipment, and maintain constant awareness of the health of our soldiers and civilians in the coalition.
Excellent. So the good news out there for the people, we are safe because the misconception out there is the foreigners, sometimes they bring the COVID in a way. I'm talking about foreigners, other nationalities, or even the Iraqis went abroad and they came back, they brought it. So as far as you guys is concerned, it's secured completely from, as medically secured, correct?
That's right. We do not have any.
concerns.
We do not
No
have
concerns.
any COVID
All right.
among any coalition.
And this is
troops
just
or civilians.
precautions, correct?
Yeah, it's a number of precautions.
All right.
We tend to, military age people tend to be a little bit healthier, but the commander
Yes, sir.
takes it extremely seriously
All right.
that we do not get COVID inside our formation because we live on these small bases. So
Correct.
if one person gets it, then it will spread quickly.
Absolutely.
So we have closed down our gymnasiums.
Mm-hmm.
For our cafeterias, our
Yeah.
dining facilities.
Yes.
We take everything to go. So you
All
take
right.
your food to
All
go
right.
and you eat in
All
a
right.
separated way
Mhm.
with all disposable products. So there's not as much sharing of utensils, eating in close quarters. All of those things have stopped as a precaution for COVID.
All right.
And we'll continue to follow the government guidelines for when we do start to open things back up because we want to have the full activities for our troops and civilians.
So reassurance, you confirm that your statement you have made earlier that your forces, coalition forces, will continue their training and their support to the Iraqi government and the Iraqi army force after this COVID-19 issues has been settled. That's correct, right?
Yeah, we anticipate that through NATO, they will take a larger role with the
NATO
training.
would be-
Your viewers would see, a Swedish soldier who's with the coalition or NATO, they look the same. It's
Yeah.
the same capability. It
All
just
right.
may be under the leadership of a different group
Yes, sir.
of military, and the NATO mission is commanded by a Canadian two-star general.
Canadian. All right, excellent. Okay, you have mentioned, you touched base earlier on the assistance you have been provided by one of the American organizations that, correct, to support the people in Mosul. As,
Yes.
as you, as a coalition forces, do you provide any kind of support to the Iraqi people fighting their battle against COVID-19? Any kind of assistance you provide?
Yeah, the coalition military doesn't provide direct
All right.
assistance, limited direct assistance, but coalition nations have contributed many millions of dollars, including Hungary, and Belgium, the United Kingdom, the United States, and other nations have contributed direct assistance with money or medical supplies, personal protective equipment to help the people of Iraq be protected from COVID.
All right. Thank you so very much. General, thank you sorry, Colonel, hopefully you will be General soon. Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Colonel, you were very kind and thank you so very much for your time. If you have a final word for our viewers, please.
Yep.
Go ahead.
A couple things for your viewers.
Yes,
Thank you, Mohammed,
You're
for
most
having
welcome,
me. This
sir.
is my honor. I've waited many
Honor is
months to
mine.
appear on
Honor
your,
is mine.
your
Thank you so very
program.
much.
I know it's one of the smartest programs.
Thank you so
on,
very much. Very grateful
Iraqi.
for that. Thank you.
And although the coalition now has fewer troops in fewer places,
Yes,
we
sir.
have the same commitment.
Yes, sir.
That commitment has resulted in the liberation of Iraq and eastern Syria from Daesh.
Yes, sir.
There have been more than $5 billion in military assistance to the Iraqi security forces, including weapons, rifles, mortars, Humvees, uniforms, body armor. And going forward, we will continue those conditions-based divestments. Our partnership with the Iraqi security forces is strong, is rock solid. We are planning operations right now
Yes, sir.
against ISIS in provinces in the north and central Iraq. And we will continue to work with the Ministry of Peshmerga in Kurdistan region,
Yes,
because to defeat ISIS, it will take all of our security forces working together today, just like everybody worked together in 2014.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
And finally,
Yes, sir.
it's great to see that this land and the people are full of hope. Even as there have been transitions in government and there has been the pandemic of COVID, that there's still going to be opportunity. And many of the young people are seeing a future where Iraq is a peaceful, prosperous nation. And the coalition is here to support security in the region. So I wish everybody a continued wonderful Ramadan Kareem, and ma'aslama, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for your kindness. Thank you so very much. And thank you, dear viewers. That was our interview with Colonel Myles Caggins, and he's Director of Public Affairs and Spokesperson, Combined Joint Task Force Operation and Resolve. Thank you, and stay home, please. Thank you. See you next time. Thank you, Colonel.
Thank you.
Very grateful. Thank you very much.